Chapter 15. Awakening and the Road Ahead. Days passed since the revelation about Gabriel. Caleb, Will, Terrence, and Yunhai spent their time training, preparing for the journey ahead to the Temple of the Chosen. Each day they honed their abilities, pushing themselves harder than ever before, knowing that the final battle against Antares loomed closer with every passing moment. Meanwhile, in the medic tent, Izashi's eyes finally fluttered open. His body felt sore, his mind groggy, but the warmth of consciousness was enough to stir him.
Ugh, dude. Where the fuck am I? He muttered, his voice hoarse.
The medic attending to him, one of the villagers who had helped care for him, jumped with surprise. "You're in a medic tent on the outskirts of Majula," she replied, her voice filled with excitement. "I'll go get your friends." She dashed out of the tent before Izashi could respond.
"About damn time," Caleb shouted, rushing into the tent with a grin plastered on his face.
"Ha, yeah, man, we thought you'd never wake up." Will chimed in, his usual sarcastic humor lightening the tense atmosphere.
"Boy, have we got a lot to tell you," Terrence said, crossing his arms as he leaned against the tent post.
Izashi rubbed his eyes and sat up, his gaze sharp despite the fatigue. All right. Give it to me straight," he said, his voice a little strained. "What the hell did I miss?"
Terrence gave a brief nod, stepping forward to recount the events. The others followed suit, filling him in on everything that had transpired while he slept. The arrival of Gabriel, the discovery of the Sixth Chosen, and the imminent journey to the Temple of the Chosen. They even introduced him to Yunhai, explaining her sudden appearance, and the revelation that she too was one of the Chosen.
Damn it. I can't believe I missed all that, Izashi muttered after hearing the details, rubbing his temples. The weight of everything that had happened since his unconsciousness hit him all at once. "Well, at least you're all still alive, and you found another Chosen," he added, glancing at Yunhai, who gave him a nervous smile.
"Yeah," Will said, "and we're all stronger because of it."
Izashi chuckled, though his laugh was more out of relief than anything. "Well, looks like the team's coming together. Now what?" he asked, looking at Koga, who had been silently watching from the edge of the tent.
"Now, we head to the Temple of the Chosen," Koga said with determination, her voice steady.
"What about the sixth hero?" Izashi asked, his brow furrowed. "We can't leave things up to chance."
"Worry not." Shiva's voice echoed softly from the air around them, the wind picking up as if she were speaking directly to their souls. "He will run into us there. I can feel it."
Izashi looked to the others, then back to Koga. "If you say so."
The group stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the next step settling in. The temple awaited, and with it, the final pieces of their fates. It was time to unite with the Sixth Chosen, and soon they would finally be ready to face the storm that was Antares. But as they prepared to leave, the tension in the air remained thick. Every step forward was a step closer to a confrontation that none of them were sure they were prepared for. Still, they had come this far. They had awakened their powers, forged new bonds, and survived. They would survive again. The journey to the Temple of the Chosen began in earnest, with the team now complete, or so they thought. The final battle was still on the horizon, and it was anyone's guess what they would face next. A day had passed since Izashi had awakened, and the 5 heroes, Izashi, Caleb, Will, Terrence, and Yunhai, were all focused and preparing to leave for the Temple of the Chosen. They knew that the next phase of their journey was critical, but as they gathered their things, Izashi felt something strange stir within him. He was packing his gear when his eyes caught something strange in his item box. His fingers paused as he pulled out a sword he didn't recognize.
Moonlight short sword? Izashi stared at the shimmering weapon, confused. When did I get this?
Koga, sensing Izashi's confusion, walked over. It would seem you've acquired a rare item, Koga explained calmly. Most likely dropped by one of the Dark Ones you killed before you fell into a coma. They're notorious for leaving behind powerful weapons. It seems like a gift, a rare one at that.
Izashi looked at the blade in his hand. The sword's hilt was elegantly crafted, and the blade itself seemed to hum with energy. As he gripped it, the air around him seemed to vibrate. The blade glowed with a bright blue light, crackling with an electric aura.
He swung the sword experimentally, feeling the smooth motion of the blade in his hands. This may be too much, Izashi muttered with a laugh, trying to contain his excitement. The blade seemed almost alive, ready to unleash its power at a moment's notice.
You sure you can handle that? Will joked from the side, eyeing the glowing blade.
Izashi smiled, twirling the sword in his hands effortlessly. Guess we'll find out soon enough.
Koga stepped forward, her expression serious. All right, everyone, time's up. It's time we make our way towards the temple. You 5 have come a long way. Now it's time you become lords.
The words struck a chord with Izashi, and the others shared similar looks of determination. Lords. They had come together as warriors, but this was something different. This was a new step in their journey, one that would change them forever. As they gathered their gear, Terrence tightened the straps on his armor. Will checked his weapons. Yunhei adjusted her robes, and Caleb ran a hand through his hair, giving Izashi a confident nod. Each of them knew the significance of the task before them, and each felt the weight of what they were about to become. The world outside seemed to hum with energy as they exited their temporary shelter. The vast, ancient trees of Majula surrounded them, their towering presence casting long shadows over the land. They began their trek through the forest, the path ahead veiled in mist, as though the world itself was holding its breath.
We're almost there, Koga said, her voice low, but there was a certain gravity in it.
Izashi, still gripping his new weapon, couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed within him. He wasn't the same as he had been before he fell unconscious. The moonlight short sword felt like an extension of himself, and with it, he felt an undeniable power stirring. The group moved in silence, the only sounds being the soft crunch of their footsteps on the forest floor and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. As they neared the Temple of the Chosen, the air around them seemed to thrum with ancient energy. The temple was hidden deep within the heart of the forest, shrouded by mystical barriers that had kept it safe for eons.
Suddenly, Koga stopped. This is it, she said quietly. We've arrived.
Izashi's heart raced as they stood before the towering entrance to the temple, its massive stone doors covered in runes that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light of the forest. The path leading up to the temple was lined with statues of past heroes, their stone eyes seeming to follow the heroes as they moved.
This place feels ancient, Terrence said, his voice full of awe.
This is where you will forge your domains, Koga explained, stepping forward. This is where you become more than just warriors. This is where you will ascend.
Izashi tightened his grip on the moonlight short sword. His senses heightened. He could feel the power of the temple calling to him, urging him forward. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but this was the moment he had been waiting for. The moment when everything would change.
All right, let's do this, Caleb said, stepping forward, his determination matching Izashi's.
The others followed suit, and together they crossed the threshold into the temple, the doors slowly closing behind them with a deep rumble, sealing them within. The journey toward their destiny had truly begun. The air within the temple was thick with a strange, ancient energy. It hummed with the weight of millennia of history, and as the 5 heroes stood before the great stone gate of the Temple of the Chosen, the magnitude of the moment settled on them like a heavy cloak.
Koga stepped up beside Izashi, her expression resolute. "We spirits will be beside you in this trial," she said quietly, her voice carrying a sense of both urgency and reassurance. "However, our powers will be limited here. Everything you face in the temple will depend on your strength, your will, and your resolve. Good luck, heroes. May you all pass."
Izashi nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. Despite the weight of Koga's words, he felt ready. Beside him, Lancelot gave a quiet nod of support. Caleb glanced at him with a smile, before turning to look at Will, who stood at Leonidas' side. Terence stood strong next to Kerberos, and Yunhai, her wind-swept hair blowing gently in the temple's faint breeze, stood with Shiva. Each spirit, though limited, radiated an aura of guidance and loyalty as they stood by their chosen heroes. The bond between them was undeniable. Though they could not fight alongside their champions in full power, their presence was still a pillar of strength for each hero. With one final look at each other, the group shared a silent understanding. This was their moment. Their trials awaited them. Without another word, they began to walk toward the massive temple gate. The moment they crossed the threshold, a blinding light engulfed them, and before they could even react, the world around them shifted. One moment, they stood within the temple's stone courtyard, and the next, everything was different. The familiar sound of their footsteps on the ancient stone was gone. Instead, they found themselves in vast, empty landscapes, barren and eerie, with a chilling wind that whispered from every corner. The world around them was bathed in twilight, as though suspended between night and day.
Izashi glanced around, gripping his moonlight short sword tighter. "Where are we?"
"It seems we've been split up," Koga's voice echoed, though she was no longer physically present. "This is your trial, each of you. You must face what lies within, and only by overcoming it will you move forward."
Izashi nodded, taking a deep breath. He felt an intense energy within the air, a tension that urged him forward, but he knew he had to remain focused. The spirit of the moonlight short sword thrummed lightly at his side, as if it too was aware of the gravity of the moment.
Meanwhile, Caleb stood alone in a vast, rocky wasteland. The sky above him was darkened by swirling clouds, and the wind whipped fiercely around him. Lancelot, standing beside him, remained vigilant, the gleam of his armor a constant reminder of the bond they shared. "Stay alert," Lancelot's voice echoed in Caleb's mind. "You must face your inner demons before you can leave."
Across the distance, Will was surrounded by the sounds of heavy breathing. Leonidas stood firm at his side, his giant armored form unshaken. The winds picked up around them, a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to pull at the very fabric of their reality. Will clenched his fists. "Whatever this trial is, I'll face it," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his determination.
Terence felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The trees around him were twisted and gnarled, their roots like serpents clawing at the earth. Cerberus growled, his fiery eyes scanning the shadows. "We're not alone here," Terence muttered, stepping forward, preparing for whatever creature might emerge from the dark.
Yunhei, in the distant corner of this eerie world, stood tall as the wind around her whipped violently. Shiva's presence at her side was a comforting one, but the swirling vortex of wind that surrounded her seemed to mirror her own inner turmoil. She breathed deeply, centering herself. "I am not afraid," she said softly. "I'll face whatever comes."
And so, each hero stood ready, facing their own challenges. Each trial would test their strength, their will, their very essence. They had been chosen for a reason, but what awaited them within the trials? Only time would tell. As the eerie silence stretched on, the sound of a bell echoed throughout the landscape, signaling the start of the trials. One by one, the heroes stepped forward, ready to face the horrors, the darkness, and the revelations that would come. The temple gate slammed shut behind them, and the trials began.